With Serene and Elantris and unable to interfere, Hrathen's plan for Arolan is effectively complete. Telri is now the king. Hrathen does feel bad for putting Serene in danger like this. He knows what Elantris is like firsthand. Or at least, he thinks he does. Serene is actually becoming happy with Raoden, though still only sees him as spirit, and provides another important clue for them. She studied Aeons growing up. Not the drawings of them, but the symbols of them, and says all Aeons begin by drawing the land itself. If the symbol is correct but not working, then maybe it's not the symbol that's the problem, maybe the land itself is. But the time comes to an end. You have no doubt been wondering why Hrathen would poison Serene in this way, a way that is going to wear off and will reveal his own deception to all. Well, it was actually a deliberate gamble. He'd had her poisoned by a trained assassin, after all. He could have eliminated her rather than taking her off the board for a time. His seeming Sheod and recovery through Jaddeth set up the fact that Jaddeth could save people from Elantris. So by now throwing the daughter of the king of Teod in, Hrathen has offered her desperate father only one way, he thinks, to save Serene, to have Hrathen do for her whatever worked for him. The price for this is the king's conversion to Shadireth, which he agrees to. Hrathen is now on the cusp of total victory, all the known kingdoms on the verge of joining the empire, all making his faith the only faith. He goes on the walls and makes supplications to Jaddeth, a hollow show, of course, but the poison is nearing its end, and Raoden, upon seeing Serene's changes, puts together that she was never an Elantrian. But it's too late. Hrathen has already won. Serene can only go out, join her co-conspirators, and accept defeat. Hrathen may have won, but there is something that he underestimated. The stupidity of Telri. The man was proof that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. After the arrogant Telri keeps Hrathen waiting with the mere nobles for an interminable length of time, he finally deigns to grant Hrathen an audience. When Hrathen says it's now time to make good on the bargain, Telri plays coy. He says that it wasn't exactly a quid pro quo, but he can be further persuaded to convert to Shadireth. Hrathen assumes he just wants more money, and is prepared to give it to him, to go along with any other things. But to his horror, Telri wants something else. He wants to be made a Gjorn, like Hrathen. That way he has an ecclesiastical position to match his political position. He doesn't have to bow to every stupid priest who walks in here. Not only is this impossible, but to further show the degree of his screw-up, Telri sent a message to Wyrn himself, demanding to be made a Gjorn. As Hrathen later notes, it's fortunate that Wyrn responded only with anger, and a warning that he did not suffer fools, and wasn't going to turn this doofus into a Gjorn. Meanwhile, Raoden has finally had some inspiration on the Aeons. The lines representing landmarks eventually make them realize they mixed up cause and effect. The Raod that cursed Elantris didn't cause an earthquake. The earthquake caused the Raod. It added a chasm that made all the existing Aeons obsolete. When Raoden adds the chasm, the release of power after 10 years of being pent up behind the door causes an explosion that incinerates an entire bookshelf. There's still something holding the power back. All further Aeons used are weaker than they should be, and no Aeons can work on their own bodies. But they've now got access to at least some amount of Elantrian power, enough to allow them to pass as normal people, which is perfect because thanks to Raoden's suggestions, Galadon has found a way for them to get in and out of the city undetected, now that Telri has bought off the guards. Adopting the guise of a Dula noble named Kalu, Raoden visits where the ladies are practicing their fencing still. Serene, unaware of who he is, dislikes him for a valid reason. He's clearly not the person that he is pretending to be. She decides that she's going to put him in his place by challenging him to a bout of fencing, which she finally ends by slicing a flower and offering it to her as a silly romantic. Sereni is not moved, annoyed that Kalu is constantly showing up and acting the way that he does. The problem is, Kalu is too Dulladan. He's a stereotype of what people think of doulas. So Sereni is convinced he's trying to deceive them. The fact she doesn't know why he is infuriating to her, hence her actions with the fencing. She even slashed his face, although she didn't see the wound because it was on Raoden's face, not the mask that he was wearing over his face. But he's acting this way deliberately rather than because he's a bad actor. He wants those skilled in seeing through deceptions to see through his. Specifically, Royal, because instead of getting worked up about the why like Sereni, he looks for a way that it can work for him. In the end, he carefully invites Kalu to join their little conspiracy. An amusing development. Raoden has to jump through hoops to join the conspiracy that he had started in the first place. Sereni naturally is very annoyed at Kalu's addition to their group, and even goes so far as to suggest that he might be a spy for Telri. This, as Kalu notes, would be giving Telri far more credit than the man deserves, fool that he is. So they discuss their options, but they are few. Telri's conversion is a matter of when, not if, and he would not be persuaded otherwise, as his self-interest is the start and end of the universe as far as he's concerned. They discuss raising up the people to dethrone him by force, but it's questionable if they could be sufficiently trained. And Kalu points out there's always a problem when people have to fight their own, and the guards Telri has hired are their own people after all. The point finally comes up: assassination. It would obviously be rather a dangerous thing to try, but to many it seems like the best option. However, Kalu points out something that they hadn't considered: the hesitance of the nobles to back Telri. After all, what in the end really makes him king? In essence, it's everyone else willing to agree that he is. If enough people say that he isn't, then he's just a rich guy with a lot of guards. Guards who have wills of their own, who might be willing to reconsider in light of the domination of Fjordell that's coming. Kalu's change from absurd dandy to optimistic thinker makes Sereni realize who this really is. During a break, she heads into private and tosses him against the wall in both excitement and frustration. So he explains about the chasm and that the addition of one more line was all it would take to get the Aeons working again. And he explains that they had to come out here and get involved. The kingdom's a real mess. That not only bothers Spirit, but it also puts Elantris in danger. After all, Delof, if he had his way, would burn every last Elantrian there was. Well, Royal says that he has something that he needs to tell them all. He didn't bother waiting for this meeting. He's already hired Fjordell assassins to deal with Telri. But he wanted to now say that Kalu's words have convinced him assassination is not the way. Unfortunately, that doesn't last long. Telri has arrived, led here by Hrathen, who has been working against them the entire time, trying to get them arrested purely as part of his rivalry with Royal. Except Telri has Royal executed on the spot, to Hrathen's horror. He's about to have the rest executed, starting with Sereni, so Raoden tries his trump card. He throws down a rag covered in brown stain and appears with his old non-Elantrian face, which shocks all of them since he's supposed to be dead. The stain on the rag is to imply that all he's done is wiped away makeup that disguised him, rather than replacing his disguise with, well, a disguise if you want to call wearing your own face a disguise. After Telri runs off, Raoden tries to use magic to heal him, but the magic isn't strong enough. He can't save him. But the real shaking news is the idea that Prince Raoden has returned from the grave, and Hrathen sees the threat that represents. For all his position as a religious figure, though, once again it doesn't occur to him this could be anything other than a mundane act. A look-alike, probably. He tries for hours to talk to the king, but constantly is refused. Finally, a fight breaks out. One guard versus another in the center of the palace. They're led by Eondel himself, who personally kills the escaping Telri. It's all that Hrathen had feared. not his plan unraveling, but that, like in Duladel, this would turn into a bloody business. For a religion that has warriors and assassins, Hrathen is surprisingly disturbed by the use of violence to achieve one's ends. As Part 2 draws to a close, the question now is what will become of this place now that Hrathen's patsy is gone and the dead prince supposedly returned. If trends continue, it won't be pretty.